Discover the 8 most sinister and spine-chilling true truck driver horror stories ever revealed. Jake had spent his life rolling down the long, lonesome highways of America, navigating both bustling interstates and quiet backroads. But after a grueling 14-hour shift, he was weary, his body aching for rest. Pulling into a faded diner off Route 66, he stepped into a world that felt stuck in time, a neon sign flickering above like a warning. The diner was dim and smelled of burnt coffee and desperation. As he leaned over the counter to order, a thin waitress with piercing eyes caught his gaze. "Be careful out there, honey," she warned softly, her voice a whisper dripping with warning. "The ghosts come out at night. Some drivers, they never come back." With a nervous chuckle, Jake shrugged it off. Sure, he'd heard the spooky tales before, carried by the wind through sleepy towns and around flickering campfires, but the tales of ghosts weren't enough to shake him. They were just stories meant to keep the rookies in line. But as he finished his coffee and stepped outside, an unsettling air blanketed the dim light from the diner, shadows dancing chaotically on the pavement. That's when he saw it, a figure standing alone on the roadside, illuminated only by the cold beam of his headlights. A sense of dread crashed over him. Whoever it was, something felt wrong. Climbing into his cab, he was suddenly engulfed in a wave of warmth that felt suffocating. But then, dread splintered through when he noticed the GPS flashing erratically, rerouting him toward an ancient, forgotten house that loomed like a dark specter in the distance. The stories about that house were legendary among truckers, a family that faced unspeakable tragedy within its crumbling walls. Panic coursed through him as he crossed an old bridge, the wood creaking beneath his tires like a foreboding warning. Road signs shimmered in and out of existence, twisting his perception of reality. Then whispers started, words scrawled into his dashboard as if etched by ghostly fingers. "They're waiting for you." The hairs on his neck stood up, fear pinching his throat. He fumbled for his phone, seeking a signal, but static mocked him from the silence. Just then, he remembered the waitress's knowing gaze. Had she seen this coming? Was she trying to save him? Heart racing, he squinted through the darkness, but his headlights only revealed more emptiness, an unfathomable void waiting beyond the next bend. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Jake crested a hill, the infamous house came into full view, its windows like hollow eyes watching him. A shape flickered in the window, a silhouette that was too familiar, yet too foreign. Hope was fading fast as time curled back on itself, the night stretching and twisting around him like a predator. What had he walked into? Who or what was waiting for him inside? The shadows drew closer, revealing the nightmare he could no longer deny. With every passing moment, he sensed the unforgiving truth: the road behind him was slowly vanishing, leaving him with no path to escape. Whatever awaited in that house felt like a trap he could not refuse. Jake's heart hammered against his ribs as he stared at the house, feeling its oppressive weight settle around him. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, but the darkness pooling in behind him felt like a relentless pursuer. He was trapped, caught between a haunted structure that had stood for decades and the void lurking in his past. Glancing at the dashboard again, the message flickered ominously: "They're waiting for you," taunting him with every heartbeat. He took a deep breath, pushing the door open with a reluctant creak. The air shifted as he stepped outside, a chill racing down his spine. It felt alive, wrapping around him like a wet blanket. He squinted towards the house, the flickering light revealing fragments of its decaying facade. Once, it had probably been beautiful. Now, it looked like a toothless skull, beaten by years of neglect. As he drew closer, Jake caught a faint sound, a soft sobbing emanating from within the walls. It clawed at his insides, arousing a protective instinct buried beneath layers of exhaustion. He knew he should flee, but an inexplicable force pulled him toward the door, each step echoing louder than the last on the wooden porch. The door gaped open, inviting, holding promises laced with danger. "Hello?" Jake called, his voice trembling. Silence hung thickly, wrapping him in tension. He hesitated, but the sobs grew stronger. They resonated with a mournful desperation, and he couldn't ignore it. He stepped inside, the wood groaning underfoot like the whispers of the past reminding him to leave. Inside, darkness enveloped him. He flicked on his flashlight, the beam slicing through the shadows. Dust floated in the air, each particle reflecting lives once lived, stories long forgotten. The smell of mildew and decay pressed down on him as he scanned the room. It was a parlor, remnants of furniture cloaked in sheets, like ghosts harboring sorrow. Then he saw her, a girl, maybe 8 or 9, huddled in the corner. Her dark hair hung over her face, making it impossible to see her eyes. The sobbing had stopped, replaced by an unsettling stillness. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice gently probing. She suddenly lifted her head, revealing a grin that sent ice spiraling through his veins. "I'm not lost, I'm waiting." The smile twisted her features, as if a puppet pulled by cruel strings, and his throat tightened, fear rising like bile. "What do you mean?" he whispered, the air thickening with dread. Her eyes, though vacant, pulled upon his soul. Jake felt tears stinging at the edges of his vision. "Mommy and Daddy are coming back. They told me to wait," she replied, the chilling innocence belying something far more sinister. Time stretched painfully as Jake's instinct screamed for him to run, to escape this haunted moment. From somewhere deep in the house, a low moan resonated. Jake's pulse quickened like a drum. Shadows flickered, and with them came shapes, dark figures swirling behind the child, whispering his name. "Jake, Jake!" They coiled tighter around him, drawing closer, the air suffocating. He turned to run, the door mysteriously closing before him. Panic surged in his chest, he pounded on it with frantic fists, but it held firm against his desperate pleas. The walls closed in, closing the path behind him. "Help me!" he screamed, but the echo swallowed his words, leaving only the joyful laughter of the girl behind. The electricity surged, lights flickering erratically. Then it stopped, plunging him into darkness. He gasped, a faint glow emerged, revealing the girl once more, her smile wider, her eyes dark pools of void. "You didn't think you could leave, did you?" A cold laugh cut through the silence, a sound that turned his blood to ice. Jake backed against the wall, breath coming in sharp gasps. "What do you want?" he croaked, desperate, knowing he needed to escape this place but feeling the suffocating grip of its power. Just then, sinister whispers slithered through the air, a chorus of voices mingling, chanting his name in mockery. As the phantoms drew closer, a chilling realization hit him: they weren't just spirits of the past. They were memories, and some were his. Each figure morphed and twisted, revealing fragments of his mistakes, the choices he had made. The home bore witness to the tragedy of lives that intersected within its cursed walls. They would not let him go without reckoning, without paying for his sins. "Jake?" A new voice pierced the night, deeper and familiar. His breath caught. Was it her? Hadn't she warned him, too? But who truly waited for him in the shadows, and what price would he have to pay to escape? Jake's heart raced as he glanced around, desperate to pinpoint the source of that familiar voice. The shadows shifted, flickering, and growing more chaotic. He felt the claustrophobic walls inching closer, pressing against his chest, robbing him of precious air. He squinted into the darkness, searching for any sign of who might be calling his name. "Is anyone there?" he shouted, his voice trembling and cracking, swallowed by the oppressive silence. The girl remained still, her grin unfaltering, eyes glistening with something far beyond innocence. The darkness seemed to laugh, mocking his fear. Suddenly, a chill swept over him, colder than the damp air. Memories surged through his thoughts, faces flashing before his eyes, friends lost, moments he deeply regretted. With each fragment, the whispers grew louder, each syllable a dagger in his mind. You could have changed it, if only stop. He screamed, attempting to drown out the voices thrumming against his sanity. But the cries grew uncontrollable, an echo of his shame and sorrow resonating through the hollow corridors. He pressed his palms against his ears, desperate to silence the cacophony, grounding himself against the wall's jagged surface. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. The girl tilted her head slightly, her grin unsettling, eyes filled with a bleak understanding. But you did, and they're angry. Her voice was eerily calm, and every word felt like a thin thread pulling tighter around his throat. With a rush of adrenaline, Jake pushed himself away from the wall, fervently casting his flashlight in every direction, searching for an escape. But the beam only illuminated more horrors, shadows morphing into figures of those he once knew, faces etched with betrayal, rage, and deep despair. There was no doubt, they had all come not just to witness his reckoning but to exact it. Help me, he begged, falling to his knees, looking up at the ghostly forms hovering around him. I can't change what happened. I know I made mistakes. Please. The shadows hesitated, momentarily pausing their encroachment, as if weighing his plea. The girl watched, and for a brief moment, Jake thought he saw something shift in her eyes, a flicker of hope, or maybe pity. Help will come, but at a cost, she said softly, her voice imbued with effortlessly chilling certainty. All debts must be settled, Jake. The air turned electric, everything felt alive, vibrant with dread. A surge of anger washed over him. What do you know about debt? He yelled, his voice rising, raw with defiance. You're just a child trapped in this nightmare. At that, the laughter, disturbing, twisted, echoed through the room like a distant thunder, shattering his remaining courage. You've underestimated me, the girl mocked, her form flickering like a faulty light before resolving back into her grotesque demeanor. You think you're the victim? It's time to take responsibility. The floorboards creaked beneath him as he stood, not ready to accept defeat, searching for any hint of escape. Jake needed to confront what lay below the surface, the memories that clawed at him. But how could he reckon with shadows that already knew his failures? Before he could gather his thoughts, an overwhelming darkness surged forward. Feel it. The girl screeched, her voice now layered with the unwanted echoes of the others. The walls vibrated with their collective rage, shadows lunging towards him. He stumbled backward, scrambling against the oppressive weight of his regret, faced with a truth he never wanted to confront. Wait! Jake cried out, collapsing onto the ground. What do I have to do? The darkness paused, silence filling the air as the girl stepped closer. To find freedom you must choose who goes first. As her shadow rippled and the weight of the room increased, Jake realized he faced a deeper terror than he initially believed. One choice could shatter the veil, but what if that choice destroyed him instead? What if the very people he wronged were bound to seek their vengeance in this nightmare? Choose wisely, Jake. Her voice floated into a whisper as the shadows prepared to unleash chaos. His breath quickened, the recall of past mistakes washed over him like ice-cold water. Who do I choose? Silence met his desperate plea as time slipped away, and the darkness shifted ominously closer. The girl leaned in, eyes capturing his soul, echoing his darkest fears with bone-chilling clarity. It's your turn now. What would he sacrifice to escape this hell? And could any choice really lead to freedom found? The air thickened, heavy with dread as Jake felt the overwhelming weight of the shadows. They pulsed and writhed in anticipation, a restless tide creeping ever closer. Sweat dripped from his brow, mingling with the chill that seeped into his bones. The girl's presence was magnetic, both alluring and terrifying, as if she drew life from the fear that radiated from him. Every choice has its consequences, Jake, she whispered, her voice echoing around him, weaving through the darkness like a tangible thread. Take a moment to think. But Jake was beyond thinking, his mind raced, swirling with images of the lives he had touched and ruined. Kelly, with her bright smile, always encouraging him to follow his dreams, Marcus, who had pulled him aside that night and begged him to turn back, to think twice before diving into the chaos. They were part of the crowd now, faces twisted in dark judgment, lips moving in accusations he couldn't distinguish amidst the cacophony of regret. I can't do this," he shouted, retreating from the phantoms that loomed like a wall of despair before him. "I refuse to choose." At his words, the floor trembled beneath him. The shadows hissed, a sound like nails scraping against glass, and the girl's smile deepened, glowing almost with an unnatural light. "Refusal has a price too, dear Jake," she crooned, her eyes narrowing, gleaming with a predatory hunger. "But you know that already, don't you?" He felt it then, a visceral shift in the darkness. Tendrils of shadow reached out, curling around his ankles, pulling him down as if the ground itself had come alive, hungry for retribution. He fought, clawing at the air, but the more he struggled, the tighter their grip became. "No!" he gasped, but the shadows pressed on, overwhelming him with memories that were never far from the surface. They bombarded him with whispers and cries, the regrets and wrongs crashing over him in relentless waves, drowning him in their fury. "Stop. Just stop," Jake cried. "You don't understand." "Understand?" The girl's voice, layered with haunting laughter, resonated in his ears, wrapping around him like a shroud. "Oh, but we all understand, Jake. Don't you see? Your past has come to collect its dues." He could see it now, the faces of his victims, each more distorted than the last, eyes glimmering with hurt and betrayal. They had been waiting, lurking in the darkness of his mind, biding their time, ready for this moment. And here they were, ready to march forward, demanding answers, demanding justice for the pain he caused. As he felt himself sinking further, the whispers sharpened into a singular voice, one that clawed at the very core of his being. "You must choose, Jake. There is no escape from the debts owed." Just then, a flash of light erupted in the distance, a brief reprieve from the depths of yellowed darkness. It cut through the heavy fog like a knife, offering an unspoken promise of clarity. He turned towards it, yearning for anything beyond this desolate reality that held him captive. "Please," he pleaded, his eyes darting between the girl and her swirling shadows, desperation coating every word. "I'm sorry, how can I make this right?" "Accept truth," she said, stepping back, her shadow rippling as she did. "And accept the price. You may save yourself, but the price will be steep." A cold realization sank in. Each choice he faced now carried the weight of sacrifice, the balance tipping precariously on the edge of morality. Who would he choose to abandon? Who would pay as he sought his own freedom? Resolute, there was no turning back. But before he could decide, that alluring light flickered again, stronger this time. Maybe, just maybe, answers lay ahead, and perhaps a different kind of reckoning. He took a shaky breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs as he steeled himself for the upcoming decision. Would he step toward the light, or would he allow the darkness to claim its due? And as whispers slithered back into his ear, mixing with the shadows that loomed over him, it became painfully clear it was time to choose who would go first, revealing a darker truth hidden beneath his past mistakes. Would he dare take that final step? Jake's heart raced, pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. He stood there, caught between shadows and light, the weight of the girl's words pressing down like a physical force. The light flickered again, almost teasingly, beckoning him to come closer. But the shadows whispered louder, wrapping him tight in a suffocating veil of dread. "Choose wisely," the girl murmured, her voice barely more than a breath. "Time is slipping away." His mind spun with memories, every confrontation, every moment of weakness splashing color over a canvas of guilt. He remembered the final argument with Kelly, her eyes wide with betrayal as he stormed away, thinking he could shake off their plans like unwanted dust. "Maybe I can fix this," he whispered to himself, taking a hesitant step toward the light. "I can save them." But as he moved, the shadows recoiled, gathering themselves into a vortex swirling around him, alive with malice. The walls pulsed, breathing in sync with his panic. Do you think they will forgive you? An echoing voice taunted, one that sent frigid spikes of fear down his spine. What if I don't choose? Jake shouted back, fighting through the chaos of sound. What happens then? A low, sinister laughter surrounded him, rising in volume, twisting into a cacophony of anguish. If you refuse, you lose everything. The sentence trailed off ominously, leaving an unbearable silence in its wake that he could feel them staring the faces of those he had wronged, murderous and full of anguish. Marcus stood amongst them, his expression a grotesque mask of disappointment, his lips moving in a silent accusation. You knew better, Jake imagined him saying. Dread flooded his veins as he looked toward the light again, a visceral pulse urging him to leap into the unknown. The shadows curled tighter around him, and he could almost feel their icy breath biting at his skin. Please! He shouted to the girl, his desperation spilling out against the void. Tell me what to do. Who do I leave behind? Her eyes glinted with delight, as if his suffering fed her. Leave no one behind, and you will succumb to the darkness, she crooned, the shadows caressing her form. But sacrifice one, and perhaps you can save the rest. Panic surged. The weight of his choices swelled, pressing down until the air felt too thick to breathe. If he chose Kelly, who would protect the friends he shared countless nights and dreams with? If Marcus, what of his own spirit? Desperation twisted in his gut as he realized he had to make a decision, or risk everything, his past, his future, his very soul. With a pounding heart, he planted himself firmly. I won't bow to your games, he screamed, shaking his fists against the darkness. I'll find another way. But the shadows merely cackled, their laughter a haunting melody that spiraled around him. The girl leaned closer, her breath a cold ghost against his skin. Defiance invites consequences, dear Jake. You might not like what you find. The ground quaked beneath him, and the shadows surged forward. They speared through his defenses, bright flashes igniting memories of pain wrapped tightly in the tendrils of darkness. With every second that passed, he felt alive, euphoric even, but also terrified. Suddenly, the bright light outshone every shadow, blinding in its intensity. He felt himself drawn toward it, the force of its brilliance like an anchor in the storm. But was the light a rescue or merely a trick to draw him in, deeper into despair? Jake's hand trembled, hovering on the threshold between safety and doom. Perhaps he was meant to confront his fate fully, to face the very darkness he sought to escape. But clarity sparked in his mind. Then I choose. He cried, voice echoing in the stillness that followed. I choose to face whatever it is that lurks here. In that moment, reality twisted, and the light expanded, illuminating with a brightness that blinded him completely. As he stepped forward, he realized he may have just awakened something long dormant, a horror far more sinister than he ever anticipated. With a deafening silence, he stepped into the light, ready to confront his fate. What awaited him on the other side? The light consumed him, wrapping around his body like a thick fog. Jake stumbled as the world shifted, his heart hammering in his chest. He squeezed his eyes shut, praying that when he opened them again, he wouldn't be lost in the emptiness. But when the radiance finally receded, he found himself standing in a room. The walls were lined with mirrors, fractured and dusty. Each reflection was warped, showing him not just his face but twisted manifestations of fear, Kelly's haunting eyes, Marcus's accusing glare, and the twisted grins of shadows. As he turned, a cold shiver ran down his spine, the reflections shifted, seeming to whisper things he couldn't quite catch. Welcome, a voice slithered through the room, crawling over his skin. It belonged to the girl, now appearing in each of the mirrors. Her face wore a sinister smile, and her hands were outstretched, as if beckoning him closer. You've entered the chamber of choices. Jake swallowed hard, the name of the room vibrated in his mind. Choices. Every choice he had made came flooding back, paths taken, bridges burned. He felt the panic rising again. What have I awakened? He stammered, taking steps backward, only to bump into one of the mirrors. It felt cold and solid against his back, unyielding. Each reflection holds a truth, Jake. One will reveal the path to salvation, while the others will drag you into despair. Her laughter echoed, defiant and cruel. But beware, for the consequences will not be easy. A shuddering gust blew through the chamber, rattling the mirrors. Jake's breath quickened as he caught snippets of conversation seeping through the glass. The echoes of his past pulsated around him. Remember that time? You chose to ignore me, a voice whispered softly, tinged with sorrow. It was Kelly, her figure flickering in one of the reflections, tears glistening in her eyes. You let me down. Jake shook his head, forcing himself to stay grounded. I was wrong, Kelly. I was foolish, he pleaded, but his voice cracked, the plea sounding desperate. He felt the walls closing in, reflected back at him, all the faces of people he had failed. Then, another voice rang out, this one deep and dark. You think you can save them? You don't deserve it. Marcus emerged in another mirror, a shadow of his former self, dressed in anger and betrayal. The fierceness of his expression cut into Jake's heart as if Marcus were accusing him of more than just a simple dispute. The weight of their friendship almost suffocated him. Please. Jake shouted, begging the apparitions to see the truth. How do I fix this? How do I make it right? The girl smirked, her eyes narrowing like a predator considering its prey. You let either Kelly's pain in or Marcus's wrath out. One has to suffer to save the other. Can you bear that choice? The room began to shake, and the mirrors cracked further, splintering in chaotic patterns. Jake struggled to think, feeling every ounce of anxiety tightening its grip on him. No, I won T. He yelled, voice echoing violently through the chamber. There's got to be another way. But from deep within the shadows, a low rumble chuckled at his defiance. You seek salvation, Jake, but it's you who must bear the weight of another's sorrow. That's the greatest choice. The flickering instances of his past raced at him, swirling in a whirlwind. Despair clawed at his insides as he glanced from one reflection to another, desperate for clarity. Time faded, and he could feel the tendrils of darkness creeping back, silently tightening their grasp. Every heartbeat counted down to his fate as he faced the puzzle laid out before him, 2 lives forever altered by his hand. With one last breath, he reached out toward the mirrors, the choices gnawing at him. What if he chose wrong? Who will it be? The girl crooned softly, her voice a spectral whisper that echoed in the recesses of his mind. He hung suspended for just a moment, caught in the chaos of uncertainty. Then the walls shuddered violently, and something inside him snapped. I will not let you dictate this. He shouted defiantly, feeling the ground quake beneath him, setting the stage for his fate. But as he braced himself, shadows lunged at him from the broken mirrors, and the choices he made hung by a thread, tipping toward darkness. Would he face what was coming, or flee from the terrible inevitability? The answers might lead him to a reckoning more horrifying than he had ever imagined. And in that moment of illumination, he found himself paralyzed at the precipice of choice. What would he ultimately sacrifice? The shadows struck like vipers, quick and biting. Jake screamed, an instinctual response as darkness enveloped him, curling around him like a predator's embrace. He felt the icy fingers clutch at his throat, constricting, pulling him deeper into the abyss. Fear surged through him, pure and untempered, burning through his veins and igniting his every sense. Make your choice. The girl taunted, her laughter high and cruel, swirling around his head like a storm. Each echo seemed to claw at him, pulling him between memories and reality. He fought against the suffocating gloom, pushing his mind against the walls of the chamber. But they confounded him. Each reflection held a different fate. Kelly, her eyes pleading but filled with tears, a person he failed. Marcus, brimming with rage, a specter of what had been. He could feel the weight of their suffering pressing down on him, ripping apart his sanity. Save me! Kelly cried, reaching through the glass, her fingers grazing the surface as if she could somehow pull herself out. Or suffer the wrath of your mistakes. Marcus bellowed, his reflection twisted with fury, the room vibrating with his fury. Each figure tugged at Jake, their voices mixing into a cacophony that shattered his thoughts. The mirrors began to pulse, a heart of glass beating with grim anticipation. Each thump echoed the timeline of choices he made, choices that had led him to this chamber of horrors. "You're running out of time," the girl hissed, grinning wider, a dark celebration of his torment. "Choose. Or they will both fall to the darkness." His heart thumped loudly, fear compounding in the chaos. Sweat slipped down his back. "There has to be another way. Please." He gasped, desperately searching the fractures for a way out. But reality twisted, the environment changing with his thoughts, amplifying his panic. Suddenly, the reflections convulsed as if the mirrors were alive, sentient dimensions pushing back against their confines. The whispers turned into screams. Shadows writhed, merging into horrific forms that clawed at his mind, threatening to tear it apart. "Face your choices. Or be consumed." The atmosphere thundered, the walls trembling with a violent rhythm of anguish. With a deep breath, Jake fought against the dread closing in on him. He pressed against the barrier, looking for a glimmer of hope. "What if I choose to save them both?" He yelled into the abyss, a last-ditch plea. A moment of silence followed, chilling and thick. The girl's laughter stopped. The darkness shifted, his words hanging in the air like a final breath. "Fool." The girl spat, her voice angry yet eerily calm. "You think you can defy the very fabric of fate? You're blind to what lies in your heart." The shadows lashed out again, almost in retaliation. With each pulse, the air grew heavier, pressing down on him, fighting against his rebellion. He could feel the heat rising in his chest as despair threatened to tear him apart. "I won't let you control me," Jake declared, eyes fiery with defiance, but doubt gnawed at him. The girl's smile returned, a sinister twist. "Then prepare to face the darkness alone, Jake. That is the price of your defiance." Jake's breath hitched, and he felt his mind lurch. The walls shifted again, the mirrors cracked further, revealing deep voids instead of reflections. He was losing himself, spiraling into madness. In those splits of seconds, Jake knew he had to act and act fast. He fought to piece together what remaining strength he had. But was he prepared for what lay ahead? The girl crooned again, "There's only one way forward. Who do you truly care for?" The floor trembled, threatening to give way. His heart raced, blood pumping through his ears, desperation settled into the pit of his stomach. With one final glance between despair and rebellion, he clenched his fists. "I'm done choosing," he shouted into the void, feeling the shards of reality shift beneath him. But as the ground quivered, he realized, what if that was the wrong answer? The mirrors shimmered, darkening, the intricately warped reflections watching him closely. Would this choice lead him to freedom or complete destruction? As the chamber echoed with a sinister laugh, Jake's time was ticking away. What was the price he was willing to pay to escape this hell? The ground trembled violently under Jake's feet, his pulse roaring in his ears like a freight train. The laughter hung in the suffocating air, thick with anticipation and dread. It felt like the darkness was a living thing, breathing, waiting for his next move. He couldn't think. He couldn't breathe. "Make your choice," the girl's voice echoed as she danced through the shadows, her figure shifting like smoke, always just out of reach. In an instant it was as if the very essence of the girl had seeped into the fabric of the room, merging with the darkness, every shadow dripping with malice. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, rage and fear intertwining like a serpent biting its own tail. Each word he spoke sounded weak, even to him. It felt pointless. A low, rumbling chuckle answered him, sending chills down his spine. "I want to show you the truth," she sang, her eyes glinting with a twisted kind of joy. "The truth of your heart, the dichotomy of love and regret." Jake squinted into the darkness, half expecting her to transform into something more monstrous. "I'll never surrender to your games." But inside, uncertainty gnawed at him like acid. With a gesture, the girl made the mirrors ripple again, and suddenly, a new reflection stepped forward. It wasn't T. Kelly or Marcus. It was himself, a version of Jake that looked eerily content, standing in sunlight, a real smile on his lips. The image spoke, and its voice was soothing yet laced with underlying menace. "You just have to accept the outcome." "No!" Jake shouted, recoiling from the validity of the vision. "This isn't me. I want to become a shadow of my choices." The girl clapped her hands. "See? We're making progress." And just like that, the mirror shifted again, now showcasing a different scenario: Marcus, alone, lost in a twisted labyrinth that was all too familiar. Fear flashed in his friend's eyes, and suddenly, Jake could hear Marcus's cries, echoing in the chamber, "Help! I can't find my way out." A renewed sense of urgency surged through Jake. Panic rose like bile in his throat. "Marcus! I have to help him." But with each desperate shout, the girl just laughed harder. "Do you think you can change the past? Your choices have chained you and him here." The shadows writhed, a living tapestry of despair. They summoned memories he had buried deep in his mind: the late-night arguments, the friendships that crumbled. Each echo felt like a dagger, aimed straight at his heart. "Don't you see? You caused this. You are the creator of this darkness." Her voice smoothed out, sultry and pitiful. Jake shook his head, trying to drown out the words with raw determination. But reality fractured as another mirror materialized, showing Kelly in a darkened room, her voice barely a whisper. "Jake, please help me." Her eyes searched the void. They were glassy and broken, holding him in place, a piercing reminder of his greatest fear: losing her. "Choose." The girl urged again, her tone shifting from mocking to almost pleading, an alluring promise. "One must fall, or both will be lost." Jake faltered. The shadows closed in, and he felt the familiar sting of despair clawing at his chest. No matter how tight he clenched his fists, the choice was becoming unbearable. With a desperate scream, he yelled into the oppressive darkness, "I choose neither. I'll find a way." The air faltered, a deep breath caught in time, and for a moment, hope flickered. But laughter soon boomed, sending shivers streaming down his spine. "You'll regret that, Jake." The mirrors exploded into shards, pieces reflecting 1,000 different versions of his life, each one a fragment filled with pain and glory, filled with the haunting agony of choice. Jake stumbled back, heart pounding, as the dark girl stepped closer, fingers stretched as if to reach him. "Your time is nearly up. Which one will you sacrifice?" Jake's thoughts spiraled into chaos. There was still a way, wasn't he there? But as the shadows closed in, he realized he was running out of light. But what if none of this was real? What if the real horror was yet to come? The darkness thickened around Jake, pressing like a vice. The laughter twisted through the air, no longer teasing but lingering, heavy and foreboding. Each moment felt like an eternity, a stretch of endless doubt and fear. He could still hear Marcus's cries echoing, sharper and more urgent, intersecting with Kelly's flickering voice, both calling from beyond the realm of the shadows. "Help me, Jake." Their voices merged, rising in a cacophony that shattered his composure. Each syllable felt like a knife carving into his resolve, sharpening his desperation. "Enough." The word ripped from his throat, primal and raw. Desperation clawed at him, burning hotter than ever. Jake stepped forward, the air almost tangible around him, dragging him down. He squinted into the darkness, willing himself to break through, to refuse the suffocating grip of fear. "What do you want?" he bellowed, his heart pounding in rhythm with the oppressive pulse of the shadows. "You say I made these choices, then help me see them. Help me see the way out." The girl's laughter rang out again, high and cruel. "Oh, Jake, choices are only the beginning. You think you can see the path clearly? It's far more twisted than you know. The shadows began swirling again, and the mirrors crumbled into molten visuals. He saw images of himself, moments branded into clarity, the chaos of lost friendships, the absence of warmth when he let Kelly down, the way he abandoned Marcus in their time of need. The shame washed over him, a tidal wave threatening to drown him. For every slip and deceit, another mirror held a truth, an empty drink bottle, a party without him, the laughter he could no longer hear, memories dappled with regret. There was a twinge of something behind it all, a flicker of the fear he felt when he realized his choices led to darkness. Do you understand what you've done? The girl cooed, advancing toward him. You weren't just a bystander. You wrote your pain with every decision. No. Jake shouted, fists clenched, fighting against what felt like an inescapable fate. I'm not responsible for the choices of others. I can fix this. Can you? Her smile, sharp and predatory, sent waves of dread radiating through him. Your friend begs for you. Your lover. Which will you save? The shadows twisted and wove into a new tapestry. He saw Kelly, tears streaming down her cheeks, her voice fractured, I trusted you. And Marcus, trapped and lost in an endless maze. Jake's heart thudded painfully in his chest, each beat a painful reminder of the trust he had shattered. Was it too late to repair what was broken? Gritting his teeth and forcing himself to breathe, he shouted defiantly, I will not sacrifice anyone. I refuse. The girl's laughter rolled like thunder, shaking the very ground beneath him. Then watch, Jake, just watch. The ground beneath him shuddered violently again. The air exploded with energy, the mirrors shattering into a billion shards, and Jake was thrown to the floor. He braced for impact, heart racing, but instead of pain, a silence fell, a thick, suffocating silence, then came the screams. Even in the darkness, the sound of anguish pierced his ears, echoing like a horror symphony. It slashed through his thoughts, each cry feeding the abyss. Jake fought to lift his head, searching frantically for the source. Please. Kelly shouted, her voice hoarse, filled with bitter desperation. We need you. Something in him broke, a hesitation giving way to a primal instinct. Jake. Marcus's voice pierced through the veil of darkness, full of terror, don't let it take us. You can save us. But how? Jake's thoughts surged with possibility. Did he have the power to change their fate? Was it worth the risk? Just then, from the depths of the choking shadows, a new figure emerged, an older man, wild-eyed and gaunt, stepping into the distorted light. His presence felt familiar, encased with memories, yet drenched in foreboding. And then he smiled, a knowing grin, filled with secrets best left hidden. Choose, Jake. The time has come. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Would he risk everything to save them, or would he doom them all? What lay ahead would change everything for better or for worse. Jake's heart slammed against his ribs as he plunged further into the chaos of whispering fears and shadows that clawed at his mind. In a moment, he felt every wrong he had ever done, each one a thin, cruel thread wrapping tighter around him, threatening to suffocate him beneath the weight of his own guilt. The girl stood before him, her eyes filled with a sinister spark, and he felt his resolve waver. I won't conform to your game. He shouted, voice hoarse and cracking, each word pulling against the suffocating darkness that surrounded him. Are you sure, Jake? Her voice twisted around him like smoke, taunting him. You refuse to choose, but you already made your choice the moment you let them down. The shadows rippled, each fragmented reflection in the shattered mirrors showing him a different version of reality, each taunting him with his own failures. There was Kelly, hurt and abandoned, her eyes filled with tears that seemed to drown him, urging him to act. And behind her, Marcus, standing alone, swallowed by the shadows of their once unbreakable friendship, filled with betrayal. The cacophony of their voices, the cries for help, mixed with an urgency that threatened to break him apart. I don't want to hurt either of you. He gasped, desperation clawing at his throat. Suddenly, the girl surged forward, her smile twisted and sharp as glass. "Then it's time you see the truth," she whispered, her voice echoing ominously. "You need to understand you've been given this chance not to save them but to confront your own darkness." In that moment, the mirrors splintered further, revealing not just their anguish but layers of his own shortcomings, moments he had hidden even from himself. Memories surged back, arguments with Kelly over trivial things, the nights he chose self-indulgence over being there for Marcus. Each piece shattered was another fragment of his guilt throbbing painfully in the pit of his stomach. No. Fear gripped him tightly, panic overwhelmed his senses. "I can't change the past. I didn't mean to hurt them." But the girl waved her hand, and the shadows coiled tighter around his feet. "Every choice is a cost, Jake. Perhaps it's time to confront what you've been avoiding." Feeling eyes upon him from every corner, Jake squirmed under the weight of their judgment. Faces swam in and out of focus in the mirrors, each one a reminder of the pain he had caused. The bridges burned. "I've tried to fix it," he cried out. "I can still fix it." At that, the girl's laughter rang out sharp and clear amidst the chaos. "Can you? Your willful denial risks them both. And if you stay trapped in this past, then despair will take them." He felt tears prick at his eyes, anger spurring his next spontaneous outburst. "Then show me how. You need to see the choice before you." With that, time seemed to bend, and the entire chamber warped into a blinding light, the reflections swirling faster, spinning away into an unrecognizable void. In that icy silence that followed, Jake clenched his fists, determination flaring anew in his chest. "I choose to accept my part in this," he shouted, voice resonating through the darkness. "I will own my mistakes and face whatever comes. But I refuse to sacrifice anyone." The light surged, and suddenly, he was no longer standing in the echoing chamber. He found himself outside, standing on the asphalt of the desolate road, the haunted house behind him fading into transparency. The girl appeared before him, shock flickering across her polished features. "What, how? Together?" Jake shouted into the night, a new conviction taking root. "Together, we will face this." Around him, familiar figures began to materialize, Kelly and Marcus stepping out of the shadows, uncertainty lacing their faces. "Jake?" Kelly began, her voice wavering. "Where are we?" "We're here to fight," he replied, taking a tentative step forward, heart pounding in his chest. "Together. I will not let the darkness claim us." In that moment, something shifted, the shadows around them started to dissolve, melting away like the early morning fog, his spirit intertwining with theirs. They clung to the bond of honesty forged through pain and regret, and suddenly, it felt as if the weight on his shoulders had lifted. The girl faltered, confusion rippling across her features. "No. You can't just escape your choice. It's not that easy." Jake breathed deeply. "It's not about escaping. It's about learning, about healing. You can't haunt us anymore." He extended his hand toward Kelly, who looked back at him with renewed courage, and then toward Marcus, who grasped it tightly. Suddenly, the air sparkled, the shadows writhing and twisting as they began to retreat, a resounding echo of hope resonating through the air as if they had broken a curse. With one final glance at the girl, Jake saw a flicker of something akin to pity cross her face. You chose differently." In that radiant moment, surrounded by friends he had nearly lost, Jake felt freedom wrap around him like a warm embrace. Together, they turned toward the open road, the path before them lit brightly, each step a promise of redemption. "Let us go home," he whispered, a sense of peace washing over him, knowing the journey to healing had just begun, but also recognizing that carrying each other's burdens could lead them further than ever alone. As the four of them walked into the dawn's light, laughter unraveled in the air, an unbreakable bond forged by choice, and with that, the darkness melted away, their pasts fading into mere shadows, forever left behind on an empty road. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this story, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive tales. Smash that like button now, your support fuels more content. I want to hear your thoughts, so flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this epic conclusion. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this wrap up. Show your support, let's keep our community growing strong.